जाड्या
Good evening, one and all. I am Bansaraj Mondal from Torin Pharmaceuticals. At the outset, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the entire medical fraternity who has been consistently trying to save human lives from this deadly pandemic. I would like to thank all of you for accepting our invitation to join us over here. I'm sure that your august presence and active participation during today's virtual experience sharing webinar will further augment the success of this meet. Doctor, you have always garnered trust and warmth upon us, and we seek the same in future as well, especially during this period of uncertainty. With that, let me welcome me today. Our moderator for this program is none other than Dr. Anand Kumar Pandey. Dr. Anand Kumar Pandey is a senior interventional cardiologist from Delhi. Dr. Pandey is associated with, he is the director and senior consultant cardiology, Dharamsala Narayan Super Specialty Hospital, Delhi. Welcome, sir. Dr. Anand, welcome. Sir, can you just unmute?
Yeah. So, thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, may I request Dr. Anand to start the program? Over to you, sir.
Right. Thanks for organizing this webinar and this Tuesday evening. And I'm grateful to you guys for giving a comfort zone, sitting in your own drawing room and discussing something new in cardiology. At the outset, I would like to thank Viveka for sharing the dais with me. We are very close friends. So it is always an opportunity for me to share a program with Dr. Viveka. He is a renowned cardiologist. I can say that we are proud of him being our alumni also. We are from same medical college and we got our training in cardiology from same place. He's quite a renowned name in interventional cardiology, plus his core is electrophysiology, heart failure, device therapies, and he's running very successfully the transplant program, cardiac transplant program at Max Saket. So welcome, Dr. Viveka, for you to be the key speaker in this topic. Just few words about, why this is very important, hypertension. So I'll say that people say it is a silent killer. I say it is not only silent, but it is really unidentified killer. Majority of patients are not knowing that they have disease. Even if they know that they have disease, that they're not treated properly. So it's unidentified and silent killer both. If you see the statistics, almost 30% of urban and 25% of rural India is suffering from hypertension. So even diagnosis is challenged. Then even if they're diagnosed, very few are having their blood pressure as controlled, which is a leading cause of stroke and heart failure and ischemic heart disease. So without taking much time, I will invite Dr. Viveka to highlight why this new molecule, what is the need of this in a large number of already pre-existing molecules, and how we can manage hypertension much better in 2020. Over to Dr. Viveka.
Well, so thank you, Dr. Pandey, for kind introduction. And, whenever we meet, even virtually, we get nostalgic about the, olden days. Then if you look at the current situation, it's been really, to my memories, this is one of the worst part of our life where, the whole humanity has been put behind the mask and behind the doors. So this is, let's pray and hope that it passes off early and then we can get to, normal life. So as Dr. Pandey has said, that this unidentified or, silent killer, whatever you want to call it, hypertension, it is still looking for a molecule which could be an ideal molecule to decrease the risk of which is caused by high or uncontrolled blood pressure. It's a number one killer. There is no doubt about this. And today we'll be discussing about that. What is the hypertension load in our country, and where does this new molecule, which is not very new to be honest, but it's new in our country, and then we will place it where the situation allows it to be. So what are the advantages of this new molecule? As you know, hypertension is a lifestyle disorder. If we gain weight, we have sedentary lifestyle, we take more salt, all these things would cause high blood pressure. So we our one of the professors used to call retention of tension is hypertension. So if you are stressed out, you are going to get more high blood pressure. And the population burden is quite huge. You can see that almost 26% of the world population and 32% of Indian urban population and almost 23% of the rural population, which averages out to be around 29 to 30%, are hypertensive. So hypertension and diabetes, we know that it's a big pandemic in India, and it's a #1 cause for cardiovascular adverse outcomes. So not only the myocardial infarction, but also this is something which is strongly related with the stroke outcome also. So it is the principal driver for cardiovascular disease, and 1 in every 3 Indian adults are affected by this. So a large number of population. The worrisome point is that even people with less than 40 years, they are getting hypertension because of the lifestyle disorder. So even if you classify that the hypertension is something which is, the BP is between 130 to, so if you see, if it is blood pressure is more than 139 systolic and more than 89 diastolic, then they are considered and defined as hypertension. So if you look at the physiology of calcium channel blockers, then this is something. Increased intracellular calcium is responsible for the I'll just take the pointer. So if you look at the increased intracellular calcium is responsible for the increase in vascular tone and peripheral vascular resistance and blood pressure. And that is why the concept of calcium channel blocker came. And we know that there are 3 types of calcium channel, L, T, and N type. And the blocking effect causes smoothing of these receptors and causes decrease in blood pressure. So we will see again that we have had access to calcium channel blockers before also, and basically there are 2 main types of calcium channel blocker, dihydropyridines and non-dihydropyridines. This has got greater selectivity for myocardium than for vascular muscles, and that is why they cause more decrease in heart rate, and more negative inotropic actions are there for that. So the classification wise, the first generation of the dihydropyridine was nifedipine. We had used in our earlier days in medical school, and then second generation is benidipine and ifenypine. The third generation is the having more potency and potent one, amlodipine, which we have been using for quite some time, and ezellindipine, which is again hello. चलो मैं अभी बात करता हूँ. So the fourth generation is cilnidipine. Definitely cilnidipine is something which is being used quite often, but let's look at the concentrate on ezellindipine. So the calcium channel blockers have evolved over the period of time. And as we said that we started with nifedipine and we are using cilnidipine quite often, but for some reason the ezellindipine was not really available. So the calcium channel blockers in hypertension management, is quite important, because inherently these are the very, very potent antihypertensive agents. So in moderate to severe hypertension, we have been using it quite frequently. And the cilnidipine, which is fourth generation, has come more for the uses in patients who have got renal involvement as well, and where we don't want reflex tachycardia. One thing we all agree that when we used to give the older generation nifedipine or even the amlodipine third generation calcium channel blocker, the problem of reflex tachycardia and all used to be very high. But now we find that if you have ezellindipine, you can see because the T-type blockade activity, the heart rate will go down, pulse rate obviously will go down. Also, it has got really good effect on the renal protection, because glomerular pressure would go down, and also the aldosterone secretion goes down. So in all, because of its inherent property of not only L-type blocking calcium channel, but also T-type blockage makes it very good for all these effects which we when we use other molecules, we had to add some other tablets, but this is in itself suffices. So remember, when you use amlodipine or nifedipine, we need to give beta blocker and all to control the reflex tachycardia or increase heart rate. But with this molecule, it will get automatically controlled, and also it's going to be renoprotective, and aldosterone secretion would be less. So evidences have shown that the aldosterone contributes to endothelial dysfunction, arterial hypertension, left ventricular hypertrophy, and renal cell inflammation and fibrosis. So the T type of calcium channel blocking results into suppression of aldosterone secretion, and that is why it creates so much of beneficial effect. And then again, it reduces the proteinuria, reduces the glomerular pressure, retards the progression of CKD. So any antihypertensive agent, by virtue of decreasing the blood pressure alone, can decrease the progression of CKD. But when this has got, in addition to effect of protecting the kidney disease, in addition to what the lowering of the blood pressure could do, and also improves the kidney survival. So the need for dialysis and renal transplant would be delayed. So let's look at who are the people, when and where we should be using ezlindipine. So ezlindipine is a long-acting dihydropyridine calcium channel blocker, acts both on L and T type of calcium channels, and it has got a strong affinity for vascular smooth muscles, and it continues to produce long-term antihypertensive effect, and gradual fall in blood pressure is shown, and it does not cause reflex tachycardia, which is the very key property of this molecule. And this is a pharmacokinetics which shows that as compared to the other calcium channel blocker, where does it stand? And if you see the indication and doses wise, obviously the prime indication for hypertension and comorbid conditions, like simultaneously if there is a CKD and all there, you can use it. And it is recommended to start with 8 milligram once a day dose after food, and titrate to 16 milligram once a day, depending on the response and need of the patient. Like a vasodilator, it can cause headache and some facial flushes, but in elderly, we need to be really careful. Yeah, it does not have safety data with pregnancy, and also when we are using antifungal drugs like azole group of drugs, then we should be not using this. And HIV protease inhibitor, that is ritonavir, which should, if it is there, we should not be using. So when are we looking for control of hypertension? We should look for the ezlindipine because it's a moderately potent. It has got, if you are looking for some molecule which has got a safety profile, good, there you can use this. And additionally, in patients with, patients who have got diabetes and hypertension, CKD and hypertension, and more importantly, the atherosclerotic vascular disease score, if it is high along with the hypertension, then this is a molecule which scores over a regular, calcium channel blocker. So let's look at the data. So proof of the pudding is that, does it stands true in different trials also. So this is how the ezlindipine would work. From the extracellular calcium, it blocks the incoming calcium, it stimulates release of internal calcium, and it causes vasodilatation, smooth muscle relaxation, and also at the kidney there is a glomerular filtration, pressure goes down in non-diabetics as well as in diabetic patients. So clinical evidences wise, we will look into some trials. So if you look at the Indian Heart Study, that concluded that there was a in more than 2,500 patients, that you can see that not only the systolic and diastolic blood pressure were controlled, also the drop in systolic blood pressure and was more than double digit, almost nearly 20 millimeters of mercury. And most importantly, the increase in heart rate was not there. So heart rate control was also there, quite robust. So both home systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure measured in the home morning and evening decreased significantly by 4 weeks of ezlindipine treatment, and blood pressure lowering effect improved through week 16. So meaning thereby that this data showed that azilipine appears to have a sustained blood pressure lowering effect that lasts well into the morning and next day providing. So meaning thereby it's a true 24 hours acting drug, and it is maybe useful for treating patients with morning hypertension as well. So we know that there are a lot of patients, because the hormonal behavior, the early morning blood pressure can be higher, and that is one of the reasons causing more cardiovascular event and stroke early morning. So this drug has a potential to decrease these early morning event. Again, let's look at the data. How greater blood pressure reduction does it achieve? So if you compare this trial where the azilipine versus amlodipine was looked at, this data clearly showed that both the systolic and diastolic blood pressure control, you can see the changes in the blood pressure in azilipine, which is a yellow bar, and amlodipine, which is a red bar, and you can clearly see that the drop in blood pressure was quite impressive with 16 milligram of azilipine compared to 10 milligram of amlodipine, and even the 8 milligram of azilipine was quite impressive. So greater reduction in blood pressure is seen in azilipine group than amlodipine, and once a day administration of azilipine effectively control the blood pressure and have stable effect over 24 hours. And it has got a good safety similar to amlodipine, which is very widely used. And the adverse effects are even significantly lower. You can imagine lower than the amlodipine. So that's again a beauty, that despite being a potent drug, does not have any trade-off of increased side effect. So let's look at the heart rate effect on the comparison of effect of ambulatory blood pressure. Again, this is a study from azilipine and amlodipine, where this study did show that the both drugs showed a similar 24-hour hypotensive effect with a decrease in systolic blood pressure of 13 millimeters of mercury, and the heart rate was that azilipine decreased the heart rate by 2 beats per minute, whereas amlodipine increased the heart rate. So it's not only heart rate neutral, but can also slightly decrease the heart rate. So that's again a very important point in favor of azilipine. If you look at, as we said to begin with, that atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease is an important indication for this molecule. So if we look at the azilipine and amlodipine comparison in anti-coronary atherosclerotic trials, here you could see that this trial did show that azilipine significantly reduces the blood pressure and plaque volume, because if you control the blood pressure more effectively and consistently for 24 hours, the shear stress on the plaque is less. And a lot of studies have shown that when you control the blood pressure more effectively, then the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease becomes lesser. And that is this molecule's advantage as well. In addition to a standard medical therapy, azilipine retards the progression of hypertensive patients, these atherosclerotic plaque burden also. Then other thing comes that increased blood pressure is not only harmful for heart and for the stroke, but also what we call target organ damage. And one of the most important target organs are the kidneys. So we need a molecule which does not decrease the blood pressure, but also protects the kidney is more important. And one of the important predictors for adverse vascular event, or more importantly, what we call cardiovascular event, is the urinary protein excretion. So albuminuria is a very important predictor for adverse outcomes or cardiovascular event. So we need to choose the molecule which decrease the protein excretion or albuminuria in our patient. And when you look at the azilipine, it has got more robust albuminuria decrease than the amlodipine, and 24-hour urinary LFFBP is significantly lower in azilipine compared to the amlodipine. And that is why this study did show that the urinary protein excretion, urinary 8-OHDG and urinary LFABP levels decreased significantly in azilipine group, and both drugs exhibited comparable and significant effect on systolic and diastolic blood pressure. So meaning thereby that whatever the drug alone can achieve in decreasing the proteinuria by decreasing the blood pressure values, azilipine has got an additional renal protection in hypertensive patients with mild chronic kidney disease. and it also decreased the heart rate significantly, whereas amlodipine failed to do so. In fact, paradoxically increased. So when we say that it has got, renoprotective effect and so on and so forth, amlodipine, so where do we place this molecule as compared to cilnidipine, which has already established itself for renoprotective indications? So if you look at the data, amlodipine is a useful medication for the treatment of heart failure and preserved ejection fraction. Remember, the heart failure with preserved ejection fraction is one entity where what we call diastolic heart failure is something very, very difficult to treat. But this is a molecule which can, increase the diastolic relaxation and is much better than cilnidipine because it has got a much better diastolic relaxation properties. And in patients with hypertension and heart failure with preserved ejection fraction, or what we call HFpEF, the severity of the amlodipine improves the severity of the heart failure and also the cardiac sympathetic nerve activity. It has got a greater effect on aortic stiffness, leading to improvement in heart failure and cardiac function than cilnidipine. And in patients with T-type, blocking action of amlodipine will show the benefit over cilnidipine. And amlodipine has got a cardioprotection also. So this paper from Japan did show that the effects of amlodipine on the autonomic functions and its influence on arterial stiffness and endothelial function also, it showed that amlodipine had a greater beneficial effect on autonomic functions as well. Then when we compare it with the benidipine, amlodipine has got a greater beneficial effect on the autonomic function than benidipine, increases the baroreceptor sensitivity, increases the parasympathetic activity, decreases the sympathetic activity, and increases the RR interval by controlling the heart rate, and also decreases the heart rate. So both drugs show similar reduction in blood pressure, but the amlodipine has got much more to offer, so making it more superior than benidipine. If you look at the additional larger studies, amlodipine with with respect to the cardiovascular risk reduction, it was, when compared to the olmesartan and amlodipine, this AORTA study did show that central hemodynamics may be associated with more favorable cardiovascular outcome than amlodipine and olmesartan combination. So, sometimes the ARB and amlodipine is combined, and it's a very, very popular combination. But amlodipine standalone can give you the same outcome, even better outcome, which this study showed from combination of olmesartan and amlodipine. If you look at the BOAT2 study, which is again end organ protection in diabetic hypertensive patients, and it showed that amlodipine reduced the urine albumin excretion, which is, I was saying, that by virtue of decreasing the albuminuria, it gives you additional protection of cardiovascular adverse outcome. And then the maximum carotid intima media thickness, which is not achieved by amlodipine group. And in addition, the BOAT study showed that the inflammatory cytokine level were decreased only in amlodipine group, which possibly explains such beneficial effect of amlodipine on urinary albumin excretion and carotid atherosclerosis. AGENT trial, again, it is the effect of calcium channel blocker on glucose tolerance was looked at, and the data was compared with amlodipine and amlodipine. 5 milligram of amlodipine or 16 milligram of amlodipine was looked at. And this AGENT trial also did show that if you look at the red bar, which is amlodipine, where the oral glucose tolerance test outcome shows favorable outcome with amlodipine compared to the amlodipine is there. So this trial concluded, AGENT trial, that amlodipine significantly decreased level of glucose and insulin 120 minutes after the 75 milligram of oral glucose tolerance test, which is called glucose challenge, was given. And the heart rate also additionally decreased. The number of circulating HPC was significantly increased, so meaning thereby that overall, and then the inflammatory markers were also significantly lower in amlodipine group. So the amlodipine treatment may have beneficial effect against the glucose intolerance, insulin sensitivity, the inflammatory state, and circulating number of progenitor cells in non-diabetic patients with essential hypertension. So uric acid metabolism, as you know, that the uric acid, if the higher uric acid can also be a significant inflammatory contributors. So azolidipine decrease the serum urate level, and this is again an important aspect of the azolidipine molecule. And azolidipine decrease the serum urate levels in urinary serum, and creatinine level response was most prominent in hyperuricemic patients or patients with normal or over excretion of uric acid. So that's again a potent benefit of this molecule. And effect of azolidipine on the hemodynamics and uric acid metabolism in hypertensive patients. Also, if you look at the change in blood pressure and changes in clearance of uric acid and creatinine. Again, creatinine clearance ratio and uric acid clearance ratio, you can see it's quite favorable in the azolidipine group. And in post-ischemic stroke patient also, the azolidipine long-acting calcium channel blocker could control hypertension without decreasing the cerebral blood flow in post-ischemic stroke. Again, sometimes if the calcium channel blockers are not to be given because that can decrease the ischemic cerebral blood flow, but that's not true with the azolidipine, so it does protect that. So the cerebral blood flow is also preserved, and this study showed that in chronic stage of ischemic stroke, azolidipine can safely decrease the systemic blood pressure without decreasing the mean hemispheric and regional cerebral blood flow. And these results suggest that azolidipine may be therapeutically useful for the treatment of hypertensive patients with post-ischemic stroke. And if we look at the effects of calcium channel blocker comparing to ACE inhibitors and ARBs in patients with hypertension and chronic kidney disease, because a lot of conception people have is that probably ACE and ARB would be quite winner in this situation. So if you look at this PLOS study data, there again, if we look at this is a very busy slide, but again, the conclusion was that in the subgroup but different CKD stage, no significant difference were observed between the CCB and ACE inhibitor. And in CKD stage 3, mixed CKD stage 3 and 4, end stage renal disease under CKD, undefined CKD stage data, all of them showed that this molecule can give protection, and as much as with the ARB and ACE inhibitor is achieved. So meaning thereby that it gives a more potent mean blood pressure control, but also the renal adverse outcome is lesser. And the other, if you look at the blood pressure outcome summary, the blood pressure is much better controlled with the azolidipine compared to the ACE and ARBs. So there is no significant difference in systolic blood pressure between the two medications were found in subgroup of data of CKD stage 3 and mixed CKD. So meaning thereby that it is equally potent or more potent than ACE and ARB, and at the same time gives the kidney protection as well. And mortality and renal outcome summary also did show that it's not only the renal disease progression, but also the mortality hard point endpoint is also almost similar between the two groups, meaning thereby that it is as much renoprotective as the ACE and ARBs are. So to conclude on this was that the trial showed that the CCB is not inferior to ACE inhibitors and ARBs in CKD stage 3 to 5, meaning thereby that in all these high risk group of end stage renal disease also, the azolidipine is as good as ACE and ARBs. So if we look at the guidelines, again, if we see the putting the guidelines into the practice, and this is again JNC 8 guideline where, all these suggest that the calcium channel blocker has got a robust space in the management of hypertension, and we all do it on regular practice. And you can see that the thiazide and the combination medicines, now the guidelines suggest that we should be using early in the course. So obviously we can go to multiple combinations, initiate the therapy with ACE or ARB, or you can go to the CCB or diuretic. And azolidipine could be one of the very good molecule because you don't have to add too many other medications. But if the blood pressure goes uncontrolled, we can go to triple drug combination, and in resistant hypertension we can again use at least a spironolactone and other molecules based on the patient response. So I would say that the guidelines have also, even if you look at the ESC 2018 guidelines, the drug treatment strategy for hypertension, coronary artery disease, the combination drug therapy is very important. And again, the calcium channel blockers make a strong part of that strategy because it's a very, very robust drug and controls the blood pressure medication. And that is why we are not surprised to see that the ESC has labeled calcium channel blocker as class 1A treatment for the management of hypertension. So to conclude, I would say, friends, ladies and gentlemen, that the hypertension is a lifestyle disease and major risk factor for the stroke and myocardial infarction and kidney disease. Calcium channel blockers are widely used as first-line therapy for the management of hypertension. Azilintepine is a very beautiful molecule with long action dihydropyridine CCB. It blocks both L and T type of calcium channel, and it elicits a very gradual fall in blood pressure and sustained blood pressure over 24 hours. Does not cause reflex tachycardia, has got a sustained 24-hour action. Even morning rise is also taken care of, and also reduces the heart rate, reduces the glomerular pressure and proteinuria, which is very important for prognostic purposes. And overall, blood pressure control and cardio protection and renal protection is the additional advantage of this molecule over the other calcium channel blockers. So thank you very much for your kind attention, and we are open to question answer if there are any. So over to Dr. Anand Pandey.
Wonderful, Dr. Viveka, for a very elaborate and very precise description of all this molecule. So one thing I want to know from everybody, I mean, like there are a lot LT and channel blockers. How do we place this molecule vis-a-vis, like benidipine is there? So how do Dr. Viveka see this molecule as compared to other calcium channel blockers?
Yeah, so that's a very good question because we already have so many in our hand. So is this the other molecule, or is it other molecule with a lot of different functions and advantages? So I would say that yes, that question is valid. So I showed a comparison with benidipine also, and it showed that the benidipine wise, potency wise, it's same. Only advantage with benidipine was, as compared to amlodipine, was the pedal edema and all was lesser. But if you look at this molecule, it does not cause reflex tachycardia, has got a strong renal protection, decrease the glomerular filtration pressure. So by virtue of all these, and then it has got a sustained effect on, 24 hours effect. So morning surge is also lesser. So and then most importantly for our, we being cardiologists, the atherosclerotic cardiovascular risk of plaque rupture and plaque progression becomes lesser with this molecule. I think that makes it more unique. And to be honest, I wonder why it has not taken off more, rapidly in the hands of physicians. So I feel that the more education and awareness about the unique features of these molecules would make it more popular and more handy than amlodipine, because right now amlodipine is being used left, right, and center. The second thing is obviously, when you have brought the comparison with benidipine, I would say that, we have compared with amlodipine. So if you see, most of the amlodipine are being used in combination with either beta block or metoprolol or with the ARBs. But here you have got a molecule where you don't need to make a combination drug. It is working like a combination in its solo performance. So it can decrease the heart rate, or at least reflex tachycardia will not happen. It does have a renal protective effect. It decreases the proteinuria. So the subset of patients who are diabetic, early diabetic nephropathy, or even the stage 3 to 5, those who have got coronary artery disease, and those where we don't want to increase the heart rate, even to an extent that the patient who are the heart failure patient, there also you can use it more safely than other calcium channel blockers. So I think the benefits are quite huge.
So Dr. Viveka, one thing, so this is one CCB with some beta blocker, with some degree of aldosterone antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's one drug. Like in all patients who are resistant hypertension, we need some MRA antagonist to bring down the blood pressure.
Mhm.
So what do you think? I suppose the patient is already on this agilitipine and we want to add eplerenone or aldactone. Should we be a little more cautious for monitoring potassium or something like that? Or as usual, CCBs and aldosterone antagonists will be good enough, not to worry about hyperkalemia?
So I think the other beauty is that it does not cause hyperkalemia. So it is not something where, when you use, spironolactone or you use the ARBs and all, the risk of hyperkalemia is more. But when you look at the safety profile of this molecule, hyperkalemia does not figure there. So it is, though has got the aldosterone antagonistic effect, but it does not cause hyperkalemia. And coming to the potency wise, the definition of resistance hypertension remains the same. Like we are doing now, renal denervation has come back. So we have one of the definitions of renal, resistant hypertension is the patient who are on 3 or more antihypertensive. And some groups, they ask that there should be 5 antihypertensive in optimal dose, and one of them should be the aldosterone antagonist. So mainly aldactone and all should be there. So it is more potent, but it is not going to treat the resistant hypertension standalone. So the definition of, even if we are giving this molecule, definition of resistant hypertension will remain the same.
So a question to company guys: why it took so much time to launch this novel molecule in Indian market? When there is so
Basically, sir, this is present in Japan for last 15 years. And in India in 2015, some company have launched, but DCGI did not give approval that time. But DCGI has given approval in December 2019. So post that only we have launched in the month of March. So immediately we were planned. So we have launched. First we launched azilnadipine 16 milligram, and subsequently we launched 8 milligram also, sir.
Okay.
So this is the.
So do we expect to have combination like amlodipine and ARB, amlodipine and beta blocker?
Sir, azilnadipine and ARB.
Yeah. I mean, are we expecting such molecule in future? I mean, combination.
Yes, sir. We are in planning of coming up with ARB with azilnadipine, and if possible with diuretics with azilnadipine. So this is our planning, which is in next thought process, sir. So based on the approval, we'll also launch, and we will be the first to launch, sir. That is for sure. So probably we may come with telmisartan and with azilnadipine, and we may come with chlorthalidone with azilnadipine, sir. So that is the combination we are planning of, sir, as of now. Sir, there are a lot of questions which has come in the chat box, so I'll take quickly one by one. So first of all, thanks a lot, Dr. Viveka, for a lucid presentation, excellent presentation, sir. So and Dr. Anand for excellent coordination. Now coming to the questions, the first question which is there in my chat box is from Dr. Sasank Tandon, sir, from Delhi. He has asked, in patient with resistant hypertension on a combination of CCB plus ARB, oblique plus diuretic azilnadipine, by virtue of inhibition of secretion and action of aldosterone synthesis, has a definite age. At the same time, the risk of hyperkalemia increase, at least theoretically. Your comment. So I think this is the question which Dr. Viveka has just answered.
Yeah, he has just answered. Yeah.
So I'm going to the next questions. That is also related to hyperkalemia. Dr. Sunit Kumar Sarma from Meerut. It doesn't cause hyperkalemia or so that is answered by Dr. Viveka. Then next is Dr. SN Kumar from Sakan COVID. Kindly compare the antihypertensive effect nifedipine retard versus azilnadipine.
Yeah, so I think that's again the very senior physicians who have had, they can bet on nifedipine. So if you look at the nifedipine potency wise, it has been amply shown that the amlodipine, there are a lot of data which has shown. So there is no trial head-to-head comparison of azilnadipine with nifedipine, but definitely there are a lot of trials which have shown that amlodipine is as potent as nifedipine. And the trials have shown that the azilnadipine is as potent as or slightly more potent than amlodipine. So answering this question, so we can extrapolate that ezellonidipine is as potent as nifedipine, but at the same time giving additional benefits. So I would say that if you look at the what we call pleiotropic effect, or buy one get one free phenomena, where you get not only control the blood pressure but also decrease the proteinuria, you decrease the atherosclerotic plaque burden, you can decrease the the heart rate can come down. So based on all the other benefit which you get with this molecule, I would say that nifedipine is not to stand anywhere near the benefit what you get with ezellonidipine. And nifedipine is one molecule which should be, which is nowadays not used by cardiologists, is being used more for nephrologists or, in emergency situation. Only advantage is that it's more, price wise more favorable to our patients. So I think answering the potency wise, definitely it equipotent to nifedipine.
Okay, right. So next question is from Dr. Pradeep Jain, Varanasi. He has asked the question: is reduction of proteinuria dose dependent?
Yeah, so I think the reduction in, if you look at the 8 milligram and 16 milligram, the reduction is similar to what you get with telmisartan. So it's not that the dose will make any use. The dose is only for mainly the what we call the blood pressure reduction. So indirectly you can say that it is dose dependent, that the higher molecule with higher dose would cause more potent reduction in the blood pressure, and that if you have the blood pressure more effectively controlled, the proteinuria can come down automatically. But the proteinuria effect, prevention effect, is not dependent on dose. So even at 8 milligram you have got quite robust proteinuria control. So I think it's to be more scientifically, if you look at the effect on the kidney, the proteinuria effect is even 8 milligram has got similar proteinuria prevention as 16 milligram has. But this a patient who are with the 8 milligram, if you don't have the blood pressure controlled well, then the 16 milligram can control the blood pressure much better and can decrease the proteinuria more effectively.
I think, Dr. Vivek, I'll just add, you've already told the mechanism. Mm-hmm. So once you say it is L and T, both channels are blocked. So this is a drug which doesn't allow intraglomerular hypertension.
Yes.
See, the disadvantage of amlodipine was that it was only dilating afferent arterioles, not efferent. So once you control the intraglomerular pressure, proteinuria by default is going to recede. And I think, good control of blood pressure is the prime target, and then followed by proteinuria. If this single drug is not able to control proteinuria despite controlling blood pressure, I would like to add ARB or ACE inhibitors top of that, but not initially.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Can you go to the next question, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah. The next question is asked by Dr. S.N. Kumar once again. What he has asked, that if ezellonidipine is comparable with nifedipine retard, then does it has vascular protection as protection against fibrosis?
Yes, I think we did show that it has got a vascular protection. That is one of the key features of ezellonidipine, because this is an indication to be used in atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease high risk patient as well. So it has got a vascular protection against the fibrosis, endothelial dysfunction becomes better. So those things of vascular protection is very much there with ezellonidipine, much more than with the nifedipine. So I would say that it would be ranking almost 3-4 times better than nifedipine as far as the vascular protection goes.
Fine. So next question is from Dr. Pradeep Jain once again. He has asked, can ezellonidipine be given in combination with beta blocker, considering the decrease in heart rate?
Yeah, so that's again a good question. So obviously, it's not going to decrease the. So if you look at the trials that showed that the ezellonidipine decreased the heart rate by only 2 beats per minute. So if somebody has got a basal heart rate of higher than 90 or 100, then definitely you need to add beta blocker, and you can add it very safely. So there is no data to suggest that it's a bradycardic effect, or what we call slowing the heart rate effect, causes patients to have significant symptomatic bradycardia or would need pacemaker or something like that. It's not that. Basic message should be that it does not cause reflex tachycardia. So the study did show, when you compare amlodipine with azilindipine, that amlodipine reflexly increased average heart rate from 4 to 6 beats per minute, whereas azilindipine decreased the heart rate by 2 to 3 beats per minute. So meaning thereby that you will not expect to add beta blocker to control the side effect of azilindipine like we do in amlodipine. But those patients who need beta blocker for faster heart rate don't expect azilindipine to decrease heart rate to an extent as much as the beta blocker does. The answer is yes. In indicated cases, you can safely combine beta blocker. I'll not be surprised that in future azilindipine comes in combination with beta blockers also.
Fine, sir. Thank you. Sir, next question is from Dr. Jagdish Singh, Hyderabad. He has asked safety profile in elderly population. Any data or any comment?
Yeah, so I think we have data from the stroke trial, data from cerebral blood flow and all. So there, most of the patients were elderly, and safety profile is again very, very robust. So I think the elderly population also can benefit from this.
Fine. So next question is, should we replace amlodipine to azilindipine for diabetes hypertension patient for kidney protection and cardio protection both? Or you can say it is a cardiorenal protection?
Yes, so that's what Dr. Pandey and me were discussing, that why this molecule came so late in India. So to me, it looks like that if there is no other contraindication, we should rather replace this molecule. And in patients who have got much severer form of proteinuria, we can get the help of additional benefit of adding ARB also to this. So I would say that answer is yes. From amlodipine, we should be shifting to azilindipine.
Fine, sir. The next question is, does azilindipine has a role in improving LV dysfunction?
Yeah, so I think the LV dysfunction data is not very robust. So it has, for sure, it does not have the negative chronotropic effect. So the muscular fibrosis and all is lesser, but it's not yet approved as an indication to improve the ejection fraction. But having said that, the improvement in myocardial function and all, which you accrue because of very good blood pressure control, will also be there in this case. So it does not cause any harm to the muscle, but definitely the negative chronotropic effect and all is not there. So that is one reason why it has been approved in heart failure patients, systolic heart failure patient as well. But obviously its role of improving the ejection fraction is nowhere as potent as you see with ARNI or the ARBs.
So I think, Dr. Viveka, you're right. It should be an add-on for treating hypertension other than the standard conventional heart failure therapies.
Absolutely.
So primarily not for, treating heart failure.
So heart failure with hypertensive heart failure, it will have a better role.
Fine, sir. So similar question has come that can azilindipine be used in hypertensive heart failure patients? So you have given the answer, sir, right now. So that answer is also taken. Sir, in a hypertension with atrial fibrillation and with normal LV function, patient, if the patient comes, then how to treat that patient? Can we prefer azilindipine in that? That is the question.
Yeah, so I think it's patients who have got hypertension and especially uncontrolled hypertension, we say that they get into breakthrough atrial fibrillation. So we need to, because atrial fibrillation per se would cause drop in blood pressure because of the faster heart rate. So we need to treat both the things. And then if you look at these patients, they would fall into more than 1 plus, CHA2DS2-VASc score. So they will need also the NOACs or oral anticoagulants. We need to control the heart rate or treat the atrial fibrillation with antiarrhythmic drug. If it is very new onset, we can give them, flecainide, or we can give amiodarone, and then control the blood pressure. So I think the beauty is that this is a molecule in atrial fibrillation also would be helpful because it's not going to cause increase in heart rate. So in those situations, it will be handy. So I think the answer is yes. But it don't expect azilindipine to convert atrial fibrillation into sinus.
Fine, sir. Sir, yeah, the next question is, if you compare all the recent CCBs, then your comment on the mostly face side effect like pedal edema,
Mhm.
your experience on azilnadipine or your comment on azilnadipine. That is the question.
Yeah, so I think the pedal edema is something which is, I would say, bugbear of amlodipine. So people, or even all the calcium channel blockers which we have been using, benadipine came with you know, big bang that it doesn't cause pedal edema, and also I think the azilnadipine is one molecule where the risk of pedal edema is very low. And but by virtue of being a calcium channel blocker, there will be some amount of pedal edema in few patients, but far lower than what you see with the amlodipine. So the side effect profile of this molecule is very attractive. So it's not too many side effects as you see with the other CCBs. So I would say that this problem will be lesser with azilnadipine.
Okay. Sir, thank you, sir. Next question is that what is your comment on azilnadipine versus benadipine? Do you think really azilnadipine scores over benadipine? That is the question which has come, sir.
Yeah, so I think we had discussed in one slide as well that benadipine, as I said, its one advantage was that it is something which causes, the pedal edema would be lesser and it is more smooth blood pressure control. These promises were there with the benadipine. But if you look at the additional side effect of, decreasing the proteinuria, the renal protection, and then reflex tachycardia is also lesser with benadipine, but not to the extent where it decreases the heart rate. So azilnadipine would slightly 2 to 3 beats per minute can be decreased with azilnadipine. So I think giving all this, and then most importantly for cardiologists, the atherosclerotic plaque progression, that again is much better profile with azilnadipine than compared to the benadipine. So I would say that it is much better and next generation molecule than benadipine. So if we given the choice, it should be preferred over benadipine.
Fine, sir. So thank you very much, Dr. Viveka and Dr. Anand. So these were the questions which has come majorly. There are a couple of questions which are similar, so I have not taken those questions.
Right.
There was a repeated question that Nicardia rated, what you answer, that what is the comparison of Nicardia rated versus azilnadipine? So that question you have already answered. So 3-4 doctors have asked the same questions.
Right.
So once again, my heartfelt thanks for a lucid presentation to Dr. Viveka Kumar and Dr. Anand Pandey for an excellent discussion on azilnadipine, sir. And thank you very much for participating into this webinar, and have a nice time ahead, sir. To Dr. Viveka Kumar and Dr. Anand Pandey, sir.
Thank you
very
all.
much. Have a nice day, sir. So with that, we conclude this webinar, sir, today.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day, sir. Nice time, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.